Hi, everybody. I'm Jasmin Dodson here with Dodson Legal Group, and I'm here with my really good friend, Jennifer Ilarraza, and she is a family law attorney. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ilarraza with Ilarraza Law.
And we are going to be talking today about different crossover topics between estate planning, probate, and family law. So she is a board certified family law attorney. Mad props, mad props. So proud of you.
Thank you.
And so we really just kind of wanted to open up this discussion and talk about some of the basics, and then we'll get into maybe some more complicated topics
Sounds
if
good.
we can. Okay. So, just off the bat, in dealing with probate and estate planning, we also talk about the difference between community property and separate property. And I know that that's also very important in the family law context.
Very important. Yes.
Okay, so tell me how community property and separate property really kind of interplay with someone who's coming to you and maybe wanting to talk about a family law matter, probably specifically divorce, right? Or maybe a prenup. When does community property really come into play?
So in Texas, there's a presumption that everything that a married couple owns is community property. And the family code actually says it defines what separate property is. It doesn't define community property because everything's community property. But then there's this little subset that's separate property. And so that's the stuff that's not going to be subject to being divided in a divorce. And so your separate property are going to be things that you owned prior to marriage,
Hmm.
gifts that you received, even if during your marriage, gifts that you received and your inheritance, and so those are gonna be your separate property, that aren't gonna be subject to division.
Okay. Yeah. So inheritance, that's where I come in because a lot of times I get individuals who maybe have some separate property that they've received from inheritance and that are locked away in a trust or like a family trust where they can't give it to their spouse even if they want to. So separate property can be protected in a trust or also like a prenuptial agreement, right?
Yes, it can be protected in a prenuptial agreement. A lot of times the people, that are getting prenups, I always recommend a prenup, but it's especially if you have assets that you're coming in to the marriage with,
Right.
that you wanna protect, beyond what, the family code defines as separate property. Because, for instance, you may have a real estate, you may have real estate or a piece of property that is your separate property, and so that's gonna remain your separate property, but maybe the income that you're receiving from renting that out, you want that to stay separate property.
Right.
But how it is in the family code, the income that you're receiving from renting that property out is gonna be community property.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Okay. Because you're receiving it during the marriage.
Same thing with things that you earn, and so maybe you're a business owner or, even if you're a W-2 employee, I want my income to stay my income, or I'm gonna keep my own bank account because a lot of people think if it's in my bank account, it's mine. No, no. Unless you have a prenup or something that says that income earned during the marriage is going to be your separate property, it's gonna be subject to division.
Okay, let's run it back a little bit for those people that may not know what a prenuptial agreement is and when they can get one. Can you just explain a little bit like when can you get a prenup? Does it have to be before the marriage? Can you get one like during the marriage? You're like, oh, we should have done this. Just talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So prenuptial agreements, just like they sound, it has to be pre-marriage, prenuptials. And so, yes, it is required before the marriage to sign that prenuptial agreement. If you didn't get it done prior to being married, then you have the option of doing a postnuptial agreement, but it doesn't have the same protections as a prenuptial agreement because
Oh,
the prenuptial agreement is in the family code
right.
and a postnup is not. It's just more of a contract. And so it does provide you with some additional protections doing the prenup, but I wouldn't say it's, for not if you didn't do it, you still can, do it. But some people try to get prenups set aside saying that they didn't enter into it voluntarily. Like maybe you presented me with this prenup 2 days before our wedding. Invitations were out. Family had
Right.
come to town. Now I'm signing it under duress.
Right.
And so you may have similar arguments for a postnuptial agreement where someone's like, yeah, you said you were gonna leave me and take the kids and all this stuff if I didn't sign it. I didn't feel like I had a choice.
Mhm.
And so it is always best to do it beforehand.
It reminds me of this video that I saw. This guy, he claims that he was an attorney because you never know what people are really doing on the internet, right? That's means that he's this attorney that got his client's prenuptial agreement set aside because she signed the prenuptial agreement with her left hand, and they had a handwriting expert come out and do all this stuff. It to me, first of all, I was like, okay, it sounds like you're admitting to malpractice because you're helping your client assisting your client with a fraud.
You may not be an attorney for long.
You may not be an attorney, you may be one now, but not for long.
Okay.
Right. But then, secondly, I'm like, it's still, even if you signed it with your left hand, like, you still signed it. There are witnesses that,
Right.
and then they were talking about how the notary was her friend and the notary was right. I'll have to send it to you. But like, it was,
I wanna look up the case and see if he really got it set aside.
I don't think they said any names or anything, but like,
No.
I'm like, like the attorney, the notary was in on it. I'm like, this is right. This
Take
sounds
it seriously.
right, a bit suspicious. Yeah, kids say it's like kind of sus, right?
It is a little sus.
So, what are other grounds or reasons that someone can get a prenuptial agreement set aside?
Uh, undue influence, duress.
Hmm.
I can't think of the rest.
Yeah, but those are the biggest ones.
Yeah.
Right. So I,
Unconscionability.
oh, so if the agreement is too like one sided,
Crazy. Yeah.
yeah, like as long as we're married, you're only going to get $1, and you
Yeah,
have
I'm
to.
getting all the community property and just yeah, just so unfair. Typically, courts aren't going to get into the fairness of an agreement. You might remember from law school, you could sell a home for an acorn. Was
That's
that
correct.
Lucy V. Zimmer or something?
Something. I'll take your word for it.
I don't know. Law school's a long time ago. It's a long time ago. It's probably not the case at all. But yeah, so they typically aren't going to get into the contract. But I think if someone's trying to argue and have it set aside, that they might actually look at some of the terms to see if there was it was I don't know if it's procedural and substantive. There's 2 different types of unconscionability.
Right. But it's just, if one side of the agreement is just so completely unfair that a reasonable person would believe that, okay, this is
Nobody
really
would sign
unfair. No,
no one would sign this. And it kinda still goes under that duress. No one would willingly sign
would
this.
sign their rights away or something like that. Yeah. Even though I don't do family law anymore, I still will do prenuptial agreements with separate property trusts. So, for example, I have a client that comes in and they're like, hey, I'm going to get married, but I really want to make sure that, number one, I have a prenuptial agreement, and number two, my separate property is identified and it's kept in this trust, and that it conforms with the terms of the premarital agreement. So that way, kind of like when you talked about like the income earned on property, where things are going, if we're going to create a community during the marriage, like all of that is all detailed in the premarital agreement. And then it's coinciding with the separate property trust. And so I just encourage my clients to say, okay, if this is where you're going to keep your separate property, keep the separate property within the trust. Don't commingle it with the community property, because commingling goes against keeping separate property separate. And different ways to commingle property is when you take separate property and you put it in the same accounts with community property, even though you don't intend to create community property. That's where commingling comes in. I'm sure you come across that more than
Uh,
I do.
it's messy for sure. So the person who's trying to claim that something is separate property has the burden of tracing it and proving like this was actually mine. And so now you put it in this joint bank account
Hmm.
and you're still trying to prove that it's yours. And so a lot of times we're having to get someone to go in and do it like a line by line accounting for that account to show that there's this community out first rule
Right.
where, let's say there's $100,000 in the account and you all have of that 100,000, 80,000 of it is your separate property. So only 20,000 would be community, right?
Right.
And so you're using it, you spend $10,000, great, y'all bought a new washer and dryer, cool, that's all fine as long as it stays within that 20,000 that's community. But let's say you spend more and it drops down into your separate property. Now you're at $50,000 of separate property, right? Even if it grows all the way back up to, 200,000 or something, your separate property is now limited to what it dropped down to.
To that 50.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a very good point. So
Probably didn't explain that well at all.
no, no, no. It made sense to me. What? All these? Yeah, but I don't do math. I don't do numbers. Oh, that's why I went to law school.
Yeah. So they're wanting to say, okay, how much of this account remained separate property and stayed separate property? So we're using the community first, but at at the off chance that you went over what was community and you went into your separate property, you have now kind of just donated that to the estate,
Yeah.
especially if you're using it for some marital purpose. It was a gift.
It was a gift. It was a gift to the community.
Yeah.
And there's that presumption that comes up again.
Hmm. Yeah. So definitely keeping it separate and doing the trust and stuff. I'll make sure I send my people to you.
Yeah. Yeah, especially also, post divorce, right? So post divorce, you've lived your life with this person until, you've both decided that, okay, it's time for a divorce. Well, if you've done some estate planning during the time that you were married, it's time to redo that estate planning.
Yes.
It's time to change those beneficiary designations.
Yes.
And you know what's crazy and what I've come across is that big insurance companies and 401k companies and things like that, they really don't like to get into it, but they'll have their own internal policies as to what they can pay and what they can't pay.
Right.
I had a client come in who, as part of their divorce agreement, it wasn't included in their decree, mind you, or else that would have been easy, right? But as part of their divorce arrangement that they had, the husband agreed to keep his ex-wife as a beneficiary on his life insurance policy,
So then he has to redesignate her after the divorce.
but he didn't.
Oh,
But he didn't. He just kept her on the policy because he thought, "I just won't change anything."
right.
But so after he passed away, she went to go recover the benefit from the insurance policy, and the insurance policy, the company
They said no.
had a exactly. They said no. They said, "No, because you were divorced, you can no longer be the beneficiary." He had to have redesignated you.
Because who in their right mind wants their ex to get their life insurance proceeds?
Exactly.
You have to
Exactly.
show them. Yeah.
Yeah, but every company is different. Whereas whatever this company was, this was their internal policy. A different company would have been different. So, it's very important post divorce, make sure that all of your beneficiary designations are who you want them to be, or if you need to redo them, update them since the divorce.
Right.
And also, especially like, and a lot of people, what I've seen is instead of designating their spouse, they'll change it and identify minor children.
Okay.
And that is a big
It
red
gets them a
flag
better
too.
trust for the minor children.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yes, I know I had you for a reason. I don't do what you do, but I think that you can't do that.
Exactly. Because then you're running up against guardianship issues
Right.
because now we're dealing with guardianship of the estate of a child versus, just having like a conservatorship in a family law case.
Right.
But yeah, when like, because minors can't inherit. If you're under the age of 18, the company can't just write you a check. They may be able to write it to an adult person.
Right.
And the last thing that a person probably wants is for their ex-spouse to get their life insurance check for the benefit of their children.
Right.
Can you imagine?
I know. Yeah. And then trusting that they're gonna use it how they're supposed to use it, and
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So I mean, it's very important, post divorce that people go back and look through their estate planning and make sure that number one, it goes to who they want it to go to,
Right.
and number two, that it's most up to date.
Well, let's talk about a happier note. What about when people get married and now they have a blended family like my blended family? I have a blended family. Put a picture up. And I love my bonus
And
kiddos.
they're beautiful. They're beautiful kids.
Thank you.
All of them. Yeah.
Thank you. I love them all, but they are going to inherit differently. That or in some cases, I think that that's probably a source of contention for a lot of couples because it's like, well, my daughter's gonna inherit from me.
Right.
Um, her biological father is not very involved, and I doubt that there will be any inheritance coming from him.
Okay. That happens.
Yes, and then my bonus kiddos, they're gonna obviously inherit from my husband,
Hmm.
and I think that their mom is well off, so they're gonna have inheritance coming from both, and so we've had that conversation, "Okay, so what do we do for my daughter
Hmm.
so that, she's still gonna get, kind of in proportion to what the boys are going to get?"
Exactly. Oh my goodness. And I'm glad that you bring this up because this is where the trust really comes into play. And it's so important because number one, you want to stay out of probate court. No matter what, you want to stay out of probate court if you can avoid it.
I heard it's expensive.
It is expensive. It is the estimated cost of probate for a person with an estate valued at maybe $500,000 is probably anywhere from 30 to $40,000, and that's just uncontested probate, right? Uncontested probate. So having a trust helps you avoid probate, definitely. And then in the state of Texas, if you're in a blended family and you pass away without a will, Texas has this thing called intestate distribution, which tells you how your property is going to be divided. So if you're married, your community property, what we talked about earlier, your community property is going to be divided amongst your biological children. It's not going to go to your spouse. So your spouse retains their share of community property, but your community property would go to your biological children. So this comes up when people own like real property and they think,
Yeah.
"Oh, my husband and I own it together as community property." I'm like, "But you're a blended family." So in your situation, if you were to pass away before your husband, you'll
He would get to half, and he would own it with my daughter.
correct.
So now she's mad. She wants to kick him out of the house.
Right.
What happens?
It depends on if they're both living there. If they're both living there, they're gonna end up in court and litigation.
Oh god.
Yeah, exactly.
She loves him though. It's like a happy.
Good. Thank goodness. But and the other thing that I see is, say, for example, your husband is aging, right? And he may need to go to a facility, and his kids come in and they're like, "Oh, we gotta take dad to a facility." She could go in and have standing to, file for, like, guardianship of him and say, "No, I've been with him. I've been his caretaker. I'm the one that can, say where he wants to go." Then you're in a custody dispute
Over an adult.
over an adult, which is essentially incapacitated, who's incapacitated, which is essentially what a guardianship is. It's
So it's like custody for adults.
it is. It is. And let me tell you, um, being a recovering family law attorney really prepared me to handle some of these hotly contested guardianship issues because it's family, it's adult children fighting over their parents.
Are we allowed to talk about Wendy Williams
Yeah,
and what is going on?
let's do it.
I heard she's like putting signs up trying to communicate with the world, and
Oh my goodness, is she under guardianship? I don't know.
I believe she is. I just heard this rumor on the streets. I have not verified this. Don't sue me for defamation. Like I don't know if it's true.
Okay,
Okay.
but disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Yes, I heard something like she was presenting with symptoms of dementia or something. And so now she's under guardianship and they're like not letting her communicate with the outside world. So she's like putting, paper up on her window, like trying to communicate, like help me out or whatever.
Oh,
How about the whole Britney Spears doing? And so
yeah,
what is this world that we're going into where all these adults are going they're having, I guess, guardians?
yeah. Yeah, and it's honestly, it's not uncommon. There are several celebrities that have gone under in some states, it's called conservatorship. In the state of Texas, we call it guardianship, but it's when you've been declared to be an incapacitated person, meaning that you cannot care for yourself, you cannot provide food or shelter for yourself, then someone can apply, but they have to have medical evidence. So it's not just a, "Hey, I think this person is crazy." Like, you have to have what's called a certified medical examination along with your application for a permanent guardianship to show, okay, a doctor has evaluated this person and they found that they don't have the capacity to care for themselves. Now, in the state of Texas, it is more for people who are suffering from like full incapacity, not necessarily just mental illness. So if you're having like a mental health breakdown and you decide you just don't want to take your medication, like that's not grounds for guardianship. That's mental health court. It's a whole other avenue, a whole other ballgame.
Okay.
But if, yeah, she's truly presenting with signs of dementia, that's like a full medical episode that she's not going to recover from. So, yes, that's where in her situation, a guardianship would be uh, definitely
Appropriate,
appropriate
maybe?
if there's, but then, like who knows that like there could be, it's like battle of the experts, just like in
Sure.
family court. You got to get the experts out and say, okay, is this something that she's suffering from or is it not?
We'll have to go to good old Google and find out if there's any truth to this at
Right.
all.
What's going on with Wendy Williams? I have to look into that.
I know. I just happened to hear it.
Did you know
But okay,
Michael
yeah.
Orr?
No?
You know Michael Orr is, right? The movie The Blind Side? Like that
Yes.
situation?
Yes.
Okay. So Michael
The father.
Orr, yes.
Okay.
He's suing,
His adopted parents?
yes, because he thought that and this is what I read. I don't know, you guys want to verify it on Snopes or whatever you go to. But but yeah, apparently he thought that he was being adopted by them, but they really signed guardianship papers for him when he
Just to manage his finances?
yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, so now he's, like, having to get the guardianship set aside
Because he doesn't have control over his finances.
because he's not a yeah, right, and he's not an incapacitated person, and the judge that was reviewing it was like, "I don't understand how this guardianship was granted in the first place. He's not suffering from any incapacity, but the people that his adopted parents, the Toolies, and this is in the movies, in the movie, the Toolies, yeah, they were in control of all of his finances and all of his management contracts, all of his rights, all of those things, until he was, like, a grown man, and he's like, "Wait, what is this? What's happening?"
It's hard to imagine people will take control over things just because you're maybe having a moment. And football players, maybe in their defense, I don't know.
Yeah.
Football players sometimes, they get hit really hard.
They do, the concussion type thing, yeah,
Yeah.
that's whole
So maybe there was truth at one point, but now he's recovered, maybe?
No, no, this started, I think, when he turned 18. I think it started before he even went to college at Ole Miss.
Right.
Yeah, so it was, like, as soon as he turned 18 instead of because that okay, so I recommend and we can talk a little bit about the difference between guardianship and conservatorship, right? So with guardianship is when you are fully incapacitated, like we talked about, and so anybody who's over the age of 18, if they need additional like help and support, they can sign a power of attorney and allow someone to help them make decisions or to make decisions for them.
Right.
But before they're 18, that's where you're involved in like a conservatorship type thing.
Yes, Texas has fun terms. And conservatorship, how I describe it to my clients is that's just legal custody, decision-making power. Where do the kids go to school? Who are their pediatricians and things like that? Decision-making authority
Right.
is conservatorship. And then when I think of you know, custody, I think of more where do they sleep every night and, you know, that
Physical
visitation.
custody of the child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, so conservatorship is dealing more with decision making.
Yeah, so we've got conservatorship, guardianship, and custody.
Uh-huh.
All these different legal
Yeah.
terms.
And they don't even well, I guess for child support purposes, they'll say custodial parent and non-custodial parent.
Uh-huh.
But for like visitation purposes, you have possession and access
Right.
because I don't want to say you visit with your child, heaven forbid. So you have possession, which I think sounds worse, but so you're the possessory conservator.
Right. Having possession.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Or you're the one who has the exclusive right to designate the residence of the child, which is a lot of words just to say primary custody.
Right. Right. Because in the code, it literally reads out the person who has the right to designate the primary residence of the child. And I have full custody.
I think it's what keeps lawyers in business is they make it very complicated. All the words. All the words. All the words. All the words. And unless you deal with them every day, it's really hard to navigate.
It is. Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I know in a family law case in Texas, you can request temporary orders.
yes.
What is the benefit of having some temporary orders?
Oh my gosh. It is the band-aid that is going to be in place during the pendency of your case. And so imagine you filed for divorce. The other side went crazy. Now there's holes in your wall. You can't live together anymore. But both of you have the right to the house until the court comes and weighs in. And so you need temporary orders so that I don't have to continue living with this person
Right.
while I'm waiting out the statutory cooling off period, the 60-day waiting period,
Right.
to get divorced. And a lot of times the case is going to be longer than 60 days.
Clearly. Clearly.
Yeah, and so more like 7 months or a year. COVID really pushed it out.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah, and so because you're doing discovery and all the things that go in.
Especially if it's contested.
Oh,
If
it's gonna
it's
be longer.
hotly contested, it's
Yeah.
gonna be longer. But even people who think that it's still kind of uncontested, it still will go longer than 60 days.
Right. Another thing is the kids.
Right.
All of a sudden you're fighting over the kids, and I get so many comments on my social media that's like, mom's always been custody and things like that, and no one has primary custody. No one has an upper hand.
Mhm.
So everyone always thinks that mom's going to win, but she doesn't have an upper hand until you go to the court and the judge makes that ruling. Either of you, it's just the Wild Wild West, can
Right.
do whatever with the kids. And so, and I'm afraid you're going to take the kid out of school and skip town. You're moving to Oklahoma. I don't know why you want to go to Oklahoma.
I don't know.
It's Cali. No, let's go to
What?
Florida. Florida, Hawaii.
Hawaii. That'd be
Okay.
great.
So you're
Great. Let's go to Hawaii.
okay. So you're gonna take the kids. You're gonna go to Hawaii. There's nothing I can do about it. That's your child. You have the full right to do that. And so, by getting temporary orders in place, you're gonna prevent that because there's gonna now be rules that prevent you from just taking your child across state lines. Because now my visitation time is coming up, or my possession and access is coming up, and you can't have them during my possession and access. And so that gives you some protections. Some counties, like Denton, they have standing orders that are going to put that in place automatically. But not all counties have those, and so
Really?
orders can really help.
I thought all counties had temporary orders that said that, you can't withdraw the kids from school that they're attending. You can't, move them with
Mhm.
the intent to change their primary residence. You can't, withdraw all the money from the bank accounts, like those types of things.
Yeah.
Not all
No
counties.
it's standing orders, I think. I don't believe Dallas does.
Really?
Yeah, no standing orders.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Yep, and so in those counties especially, you're gonna wanna get temporary orders. What drives me bonkers, though, and I don't even know if you can do this, but I see attorneys do it over and over again, we beat them at temporary orders
uh-huh.
because I talk really fast, so I'm gonna get more evidence to leave it at temporary orders. So then they file a motion for further temporary orders.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm like,
I remember that
"All right,
back
what
in
has
the day.
changed?" I have had one case, they have done further temporary orders 3 times,
Oh my goodness.
and the judge keeps knocking them down, and so now they set it for a jury trial because crazy Texas. I love Texas, though.
Yeah.
But they'll allow jury trials for family law cases.
Okay, but jury trials in a family law case is limited, right? What can the jury decide?
So I'd have to go back. just to make sure because they are so rare.
Okay.
But a jury can decide who has the exclusive right to designate the residence.
Okay.
And I think that the judge is going to decide possession and access. So, how much time the other person gets for visitation and things like that.
Okay.
But the judge can't usurp the jury's verdict
Right.
and switch it if they want the other person to have custody. So the jury can decide who has that right. They're so rare. I've only done 2.
Right. I remember during COVID, everybody was requesting jury trials so that they could get kicked
Yeah.
down the road. It
Yeah.
was like I had one and the opposite party requested a jury trial, and I was like, because you knew you were going to lose
Yeah.
bench trials, so now you're going to make us wait and pay for a jury trial.
Yeah, typically our cases are going to bench trials because jury trials are so expensive.
They are.
I love them. I love being in the courtroom, but holy moly, they are very expensive because you got to think you're spending a whole day just picking who your jurors are going to be.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, so as a family law attorney, if you could do like family law practice reform, like just to get families like in and out, what would you do? How would you change the process of getting divorced or even like deciding child custody, child support? What would you do to help like kind of streamline the process?
Texas actually, I feel is pretty streamlined because I'm licensed in Florida, Virginia, and Texas.
Okay.
Texas is the only one of those states that has what's called a standard possession order,
Oh,
where you can really predict what a court is going to do, or at least the legislator has told the courts what they're supposed to do. And so, all right, I can tell you coming in that typically there's going to be one person that has primary custody or the right to designate, and the other person's going to get visitation. Um, you know, Thursdays are overnights, and then also every other weekend from Friday when school lets out till Monday when school goes back. And so it's pretty uniform in that that's what the judges are supposed to do, absent some really great reason for deviation. The standard possession order does keep changing.
mm-hmm.
It used to not be Thursday overnight. It was like a couple hours on Thursday.
Yeah, but they've expanded it.
Yes, because the fathers' rights groups, they go down to the legislator every legislative session and they're trying to really push for 50-50 custody.
Okay.
And so right now with the expanded standard, which is the new standard, it's probably a 47-53 split.
So it's really close.
It's really close for 50-50. And so I think that it is pretty streamlined. I think the 60-day waiting period, it's not it's not the worst.
It's not.
No,
We have
probably a year.
in Nevada, and so in Nevada, it was 2 weeks residency
Shut up.
to obtain jurisdiction to file a divorce in Las Vegas, Nevada. So you could do a if you're a resident, you could do same day divorces.
Oh my gosh. It's just one bad fight. Okay, I want a little cool it off period.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually knew someone who did a same day divorce. She actually worked for one of the judges that I externed for, and she was a staff there. And her husband, like, she was just like found out he was doing some stuff he wasn't supposed to do. So she went in the morning. She went and had the paperwork drafted, like
I mean, so you get served. It's like you got 1 hour to respond.
no, 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 no. It was okay. So she did the petition for divorce, waiver of service, and the divorce decree. And she took it to her soon to be ex husband and was like, sign all three. He went boom, 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 filed all three at the same time, one after the other, and she was divorced, same day divorce.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but they have to, right? Because you could get married on a whim in Vegas.
That's true. One bad night. Or one good night.
One good night. I was actually married in Vegas.
Really?
I was.
So one good night and then the divorce is the bad day.
Divorce is a bad day.
One good day, bad day.
Right. But speaking of Britney Spears, she did the same thing. I don't know if she did. I'm sure she didn't do a same day divorce,
Yeah.
but
She got married in Vegas.
she did get married in Vegas.
So the backup dancer.
No, that was to her high school like friend or whatever. Or
Who
something
was the
like that.
backup? How many times have you been married?
Kevin Federline. You remember Kevin Federline? Yeah, that was the backup dancer.
Okay, so she's been married again to a high school guy?
That was before Kevin.
She's been married twice?
She's been married, I think, 3 times.
Now I don't feel so bad. I'm divorced.
Listen, third time's a charm.
And there's something called second divorce shame.
Really?
Yeah, people are like, they really want that second relationship to work because they've been divorced once. I think after that you just stop caring. But they really push for it. And so people come to me and they really don't want to get divorced, but they're in a situation that there's just no help in it.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't come across that anymore because usually people come to me and they're like, okay, we want to either create an estate plan or someone has passed away and we need to clean up the process.
Do you like your job now more than when you were doing family law.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do, hands down. I still get that personal aspect of helping families,
Right.
you know what I mean? Which I think that's why we get into the practice that we do, because we don't wanna just be in the background pushing papers. We wanna be there with our clients, holding their hands, giving them Kleenex while they're crying, being there to comfort them, and providing a solution to a problem that's more intimate and more personal than just, maybe, like, business litigation or civil litigation or something like that.
Right.
So I still get that, touching concern with the families.
Love it.
Like we just did Lindy and I were in Austin doing an estate plan signing down in Austin, and we had, like, the whole family come in because the parents were like, "We're gonna do our estate plan, and we also wanna make sure that we have the power of attorney and medical power of attorneys for our adult children just in case something were to happen to them." So it was like a whole family process, and while we're doing the trust, they're explaining to their kids, "This is what we're doing with our trust. This is how it operates. If something happens to us, this is the how it flows." So I think it's very important to get your family involved in your estate planning so that they
They're not
know.
surprised.
Right, they're not surprised. And then especially with blended families, we talked about that a little bit earlier. With blended families, you really want to make sure that things are well documented and that your kids understand how the process is going to work if something happens to one parent. Because the last thing you want is for one child to be like, oh, I should have gotten more. Or the biggest issue I see with probate litigation is when the person who's passed away has miscommunicated to their kids or their beneficiaries what they're gonna get, because it's all about expectations. Like the children have these expectations, "Oh, when mom passes away or when dad passes away, I'm going to get this." And when the will turns up that it's something different,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, "Oh, no, there was some coercion or something else happened."
Right.
So, you've got a situation where when you have multiple kids in a blended family, especially and your kids are younger now, but once they get older, you really wanna say, "Okay, this is how we did this and why." And now we live in a digital age, so it's not hard to make a video,
Yeah.
to say, "Okay, this is why I did this." I love
That'd be a hard video to make. Do you help with that?
I
I mean, you got the setup.
we do have the setup.
I think that should be a service you offer. Come make your death videos.
Oh my goodness, that sounds awful. Nobody wants to do that.
But okay, but not every business idea is a winner. Okay,
Do you wanna make a death video?
I don't want that in my algorithm. Put that in no, put in your retainer agreement, like, okay, I'm gonna be doing your will. We're setting up your trust, and then we're gonna also do this video.
Right.
For this much on top of it. We're gonna do your video. Dress nice, say
You know what? I tell people there's a certain point with legal practice as counsel, you can only go so far. I tell people how to do it because we provide them with all their documents on a flash drive.
I'm just trying to provide services.
So I'll tell them you can get your own phone and and record a message to your loved one.
When this takes off, you're laughing now. When this takes off, people are gonna get professional videos, you know?
Oh my goodness, can you imagine?
Little emojis coming
Little
on.
you know what? I just picture in my mind, like, the little old lady on the Chase Lounge wearing all of her jewelry with her fur coats and her stoles just sitting
Let's do it right here.
sitting in the side just like, "Hello, children." You know?
Your office is lovely. This is so much better.
Thank you. Well, you know what? I love your videos. I'm a big fan. I like and subscribe.
No, thank you. I do too. Yours are fine. So my kiddo, she's 9,
Mhm.
but she has talked about death, and I get the, "Mom, I can't live without you, and I love you so much. You're my mommy," all that stuff. But she knows what I do for a living, and she says, "So, Mom, when you die, can I have your job?" And I was like, look, all seriousness, I was like, "Can I not die, though? Can I retire?"
Right, or can we work together for a little while and
She was really bad with me dying and her just taking my job. She just wants to know what's next for her.
oh my goodness.
So, we do need to have that combo.
It's very important. So one of my last family law cases, I was preparing for trial, and I had my daughter here in the office helping me organize my exhibits. And like I know how racy these text messages can be.
Well, if they can read, they can't. She's on the couch with me like this, and I'm like, "Stop."
Don't look at it.
Yeah.
Don't look at it. So I go into the office and I'm like, "Did you read any of those?" And she was like, "I did. I did." I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry.
Now
I'm
she
so
never wants to
sorry.
get married.
I'm so sorry." Well, no, it was a opposite party was engaging in illicit text messages with someone other than her husband.
Uh-oh.
and it was one of our exhibits, and so,
Race.
yeah, it was very explicit. Very explicit. And so I was like, but this is my daughter. She was in at the time, I think she was probably freshman in high school.
Definitely can read.
Definitely can read and
Yeah.
understand what certain emojis represent.
Mm-mm. Eggplant, whatever. Yeah,
It's always the eggplant. It's always the eggplant emoji. Oh my goodness. You know what? I
text messaging.
text message. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you want to draft it, but don't send it.
Don't. Videos,
Videos.
pictures. Stop.
Don't yeah, that's all
Yeah.
evidence. The last thing you want is for all of that to okay, so when I was practicing in Las Vegas, one of my very first protective order hearings was this girl, she was so sweet. She was a waitress at one of the casinos and she had this stalker, this
Oh,
guy who was just creepy.
okay.
And they dated for a little while and he felt like that gave him full access to send her pictures and videos and messages and things like that. And so he chose to represent himself.
Mm. Don't do it.
Don't DIY your divorce.
Mm-mm. Or your protective order.
Or your protective order, anything legal. Don't DIY it.
I hired a divorce attorney for my divorce.
You're supposed to. We're lawyers and we hire lawyers, right?
Abraham Lincoln said a person who represents themselves has a fool for a client.
That's true. That is absolutely true. So this fool gets up on the stand and I'm like, the protective order details in her affidavit that he's been sending her explicit photographs of himself.
All these eggplants.
All of these his own eggplants. And he's like, I have never sent her any pictures. And I said, okay, Your Honor, permission to approach the witness. Do you recognize this document?
Uh-oh. Is this yours? He said, is this your eggplant?
I did. I did. It was my first time. My first time ever. And I think that was like, okay, after I'd done that,
Did he deny it? No, mine's much bigger.
oh no, he lied. He he was like, that's me. And the judge, I made a cop. She's like, I don't want to see it. I don't need to see it. Needless to say, their protective order was granted, and he finally like left her alone. But like, come on, guys, come on. You don't want to introduce pictures of your eggplant.
No. Okay, so here's one. I used to work at doing insurance defense, and someone was trying to claim that he had gotten an STD from a toilet seat.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, and
You cannot get an STD from a toilet
he
seat.
claimed it, and he was pro se. And on his exhibit list, his first exhibit, quote, my eggplant. No, I can't quit. No, plant. Out of the extra of my eggplant. And so the court was like, so you're going to offer that into evidence. We have to keep that here. How do we, are we detaching this? What are we doing with your eggplant? Don't DIY.
Don't DIY.
Because then you got to give the court your eggplant.
Right. Right. And again, I'm not a medical doctor. I have a doctorate of law degree.
Yeah.
But from what I know, you cannot obtain STDs from toilet seats.
No,
I don't think I don't think that's
yeah, that case didn't go very far.
right. Do you know I did insurance defense too? That's how I started. Yes, love it. In the grind, doing all the distillery.
Okay, though, because the experience I got, like I did like 90 depots my first year.
Yeah. So insurance defense is the opposite of personal injury. So you see these personal injury attorneys where they say, big insurance companies trying to stop you from getting paid. That was us. That was us in defense. Yeah.
That big puddle that you slipped on at the store, you were wearing flip flops. You
Right.
dumb.
Assumption of the risk. You saw it.
Yeah,
You saw it.
and so that's what we did.
Yeah. But do you find that that now you're an expert on all things spinal?
He's out. It sounds like radiculopathy. Like, yes, yeah, no. I left that world because I wanted something more interesting,
Yes.
and so I think that the pendulum for me, it swung like really hard because family law is very interesting. But I think that there was recently an article, and when I say recent, within the past couple of years,
Right.
about family law attorneys experiencing PTSD because you're living through your client's traumas, and all I hear day in day out is one sad relationship and trauma after another. And so I can kind of see it. And my husband's army. And when I told him that family law attorneys have PTSD, he laughed at me.
I know, but but here's the thing. So I'm actually doing a presentation in the next couple days about mindfulness practices for practicing attorneys. So I think that's really, really important that you brought that up because I think it's family law is so emotional. And we go through, like you said, we go through these things with our clients, but we also have to have the ability to have an outlet for it, or else we will also suffer from burnout. And I think that was part of the reason why I stepped away from family law because I was getting burned out. I specifically remember I was on a call with a client who was just like bawling her eyes out over her divorce. And I was just like, I don't, I can't, I gotta step away from this for a little while. Will I ever go back to family law?
That's hard.
Maybe. I think I pick and choose now, but yeah, it's like if you're especially the attorneys that do, like, the really hardcore, like, CPS cases, I don't think that I was meant and designed to do that, so kudos to all those practicing attorneys out there that are doing those CPS
Those
cases.
are hard, yes.
Yeah, but there's gotta be some type of an outlet because you cannot just continue to accept the input, the emotional
Right,
input without having,
and I
people
know it.
process it. Yeah.
I don't want anyone to feel, sorry for me with what I'm about to say or sorry for any family law attorney because we choose to do this. But I have found in my practice that people who are leaving like an abusive relationship and they're in a position where they have no power, no say so, and stuff like that, they are finally getting a voice back. And so now they've turned it, and I almost find that they are aggressive to us as family law attorneys.
Right.
Like, no, you didn't say this right, or you didn't do that, or why don't you? And now AI, everyone's like drafting their own pleadings and sending them to us, like, file this. I'm like, it can't, as or like, "It's frivolous filing, I can be sanctioned," like, "Stop what you're doing, please." But they don't trust you, it's hard for them to trust anybody, and so
Right.
I literally, I don't wanna get in email wars with someone going back and forth where they're like, "You need to do this or you need to do that, and we need to sue them for perjury," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's gonna be like a criminal, like, a
We don't do
prosecutor's gonna
right.
do that. If they want you to do it and you're not representing me," and it's like so they're going through so much, and so I just give them so much grace because they're going through a lot, but
Yeah.
they do sometimes take it out on us, and it's hard, and then it increases their fees because now I'm teaching you why this exhibit can't come in and it's hearsay and things like that,
Yeah.
and so I'm spending the time teaching you that instead of preparing your case for trial,
Mhm.
and so it could be hard.
I get it, on the opposite side with estate planning as well, where people think that they can just DIY, download a form,
Uh-huh.
fill out their own will, but in the state of Texas, the execution of a will is so specific, and it has to be done according to the estate's
You have
code.
witnesses.
Witnesses, it has to be signed, but, it happened twice. It was just once, but it happened twice where we got DIY wills where the individual did not identify a beneficiary.
Oh, no.
So they put out all their stuff, who they didn't want it to go to, but they failed to identify who the beneficiary was. So you cannot it's a will
They don't have
to go through probate,
okay,
but then you also have to do the heirship determination, which is a separate proceeding to
okay.
determine who the heirs are, who's going to inherit. So that's why it's very important that you leave the professional stuff to the professionals and Google or AI, like they're just spitting out information. It's not actual practicing law because
Right,
what we do, it is a practice.
right.
And we're at the level that we are because we spent so many years
Learning.
practicing and learning and making the mistakes so that when we get to your case, we don't make those same mistakes again. Google AI is just taking all the information, processing it, and spitting out an answer. It's like math, right?
Yeah.
And the practice of law is not like math.
Well, I've double checked case citations that they've given me on AI, and I'm like, this case doesn't say that at all.
Yeah,
And so it can just be wrong. But they probably spend a lot more money whenever they did that DIY will. And now you're having to come in and fix it for their family.
right, and through probate. Whereas if they would have hired a professional to take care of it in the first place, the chances are, is everything gonna be perfect? No, it's not gonna be perfect because it's a legal practice, not a legal perfect. But the chances of those mistakes happening and saving you and your family a lot of time and money can be avoided just by listening to the attorneys.
Right.
Like, we went through law school.
Yeah.
We went through went through all the things so that we have the knowledge we do.
Well, yeah, and it's the same thing with divorce. You have your pleading and you come to me and you've worked your case and now you're wanting me to like finalize up uh, and I'm looking at your pleading and you're saying you want a name change. Well, you didn't put that in your pleading. The court can't grant you something that's not there. So now I'm having to go and amend your pleading or you want, sole managing conservatorship, but you put joint managing and so we've got to now I have to read what you did,
Uh-huh,
correct what you did,
uh-huh.
do this a minute. So it's we can just take out some steps. I can just do it right the first time. And so it will save you money.
It will. It will. It will. So, and you hire a professional, trust the professionals. Let the professionals do their job. Like if I needed some dental work, I'm not gonna go do it myself.
No.
Uh,
No.
I'm gonna go to the dentist and let them do it.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for someone, whether they're in the state of Texas, in the state of Virginia, in the state of insanity? How would they or how should they go about finding a family law attorney?
I definitely would look for someone with experience.
Okay.
Um, in my personal divorce, um, I hired someone who I think is practiced in front of the Virginia Supreme Court. She's been practicing since like I was a baby. Like she's been practicing forever, very respected, and she knows her stuff. And my ex hired an attorney who I believe had practiced for 2 years.
Oh,
One of them was in bankruptcy and one of them in family law. And we actually, I won custody of my child on a motion to compel discovery because the attorney had wrote mine and said, "Hey, I'm going out of town this weekend. I know you have your motion to compel discovery hearing set. I can't do that right now." She said, "Okay, well, I don't want him just coming up, swooping and picking up the kid and taking her. So the only way that we're going to be agreeable to resetting this hearing is, giving my client custody." Cool. So
oh,
her and I were both shocked, and we were like, "Well, I've never won custody on a motion to compel discovery."
but because the other attorney, number one, probably didn't know how to do the work. Number two, didn't want to do the work,
Wasn't experienced.
wasn't experienced, and didn't have time to do it. The failure of the attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that definitely could be detrimental. And so you want someone who cares.
Right.
You want someone who knows what they're doing.
Hmm.
And some states like Texas, we have that board certification.
We do.
And it's hard to even be able to sit for that test. There's certain requirements even to sit for the test. And then the test is very hard. I would say it was even harder than the bar exam.
Oh wow.
And so, yeah, the passage rate is very low.
Mhm.
And of the 120,000 attorneys in Texas, only 824 are board certified in family law.
Wow.
So that can really help narrow down your search whenever you're looking for an attorney. If you're trying to make sure that you know that you're hiring an attorney that really knows the family code.
Hmm. Um, and then the other thing, I know that a lot of family attorneys charge a consultation fee. Should a person just immediately shy away because there's a consultation fee?
I would say no, because what you're doing is you're paying for the attorney's time and expertise.
Right.
And so some firms, their consultation is going to be with a paralegal or a legal assistant that can't give you legal advice.
Mm.
All they can do is listen to your case, evaluate it.
More of your intake.
It's more of an intake.
Okay.
And so you're not going to leave with like a game plan where, if you're sitting down with an attorney and they're taking the time away from their clients that I want you preparing for my trial.
Right.
So instead of doing that, I'm sitting down with you and I'm going to talk to you about your case. You're going to pay for my expertise and I'm probably going to give you a plan of action and give you some legal advice. Where other people, that would be the unauthorized practice of law. They can get in trouble if they were trying to give you legal advice.
That's true.
A lot of people give legal advice online. I would stop.
Don't, no. No. No, just stop.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we're both lawyers.
Yeah.
We're providing information, but at the same time, if you have a specific situation that you need help with, definitely reach out to an attorney. Spend the money if they have a consultation fee so that you feel comfortable with them, right? Because I mean, it's different. It's personal. Family law is personal.
Right. You need to vibe well with your attorney. You're going to, within hours of meeting them, I'm telling you my secrets, everything that all the skeletons in my closet, I'm telling you all kinds of stuff.
Right. Right, and it's hard. It's hard for people to take that step and say, "Hey, I need this divorce. I need to sit down and talk with
Mm.
this attorney and think about, what it's gonna be like."
Right.
And I know that my clients are the same. It's hard for people to think about the end. It's hard for them to give themselves permission to say, "One day I am no longer gonna be here, and I
Yep.
wanna make sure that all my stuff is protected and it goes to who I want them to go to." And I'm assuming it's the same way for people, and you even went through a divorce yourself. Like, it's hard to pull that trigger and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna tell you, like, how, you know, like, this is gonna be
Yeah.
over. Like,
Right.
how do we make this happen?"
So, what sets your firm apart from other firms that do probate, estate planning, all that stuff?
Well, one thing is not only do we do estate planning, but we also do probate. So we also work with the documents that we're creating, which I think gives us a unique advantage because we know what works and what doesn't work. There are some firms that only practice estate planning and that only practice, probate. But we have the benefit of saying, okay, like we litigated with certain documents and we know what clauses work, what clauses don't work,
Yeah.
what things need to be included.
Tried and true.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's one of the things that sets us apart. And another thing is the personal aspect of it. Like we're a small firm. We're not warehousing it. We're not just pulling, and you're a small firm as well,
Yes.
right? I know all of my clients.
Mm.
I've talked with all of my clients. I've had consultations with them, or my partner Kelly has talked with
Right.
all of our clients. We're not just like sending our paralegals out to do the intake and then taking your money and you never talk to an attorney.
Right.
That's one thing that when I had Chandler Ross here, they said make sure you are actually speaking to an attorney with
Oh,
any law firm that you hire or that you deal with. Because if you're just talking with paralegals and support staff, then I don't feel like you're getting the full, um,
right.
y- taking full advantage of the resources that are available. All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for coming and talking with me today. I truly appreciate it. I've been wanting to get you on my couch for the longest time. So thank you for providing all of your insights. And if you want to tell everybody where to find you,
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It was so much fun. But I'm at Ilarraza Law, and so on TikTok you can find us at iLawTex, so ILAWTEX, and on Instagram you can find us at Ilarraza Law.
okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.